Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey friends, welcome back to Chats from the Blog Cabin. As you noticed, if you might not have noticed, a little bit different perspective today. It's always good to change things around and get a new perspective, and I think I'm learning a lot. I told you I did a podcast episode about Mr. Rogers and reading about his biography in the book 5 Mere Christians, and this is what the book looks like if you want to pick it up. It's by Jordan Rayner and Kaylee Cox. But today I want to talk to you about the second person that and I'm probably going to do all 5 people that they do in this biography because I'm learning so much. But I want to talk to you today about a woman that I've never heard of before, but of course, because it didn't affect me. And I started thinking about how often are we not worried about things that don't affect us? You know, I want to learn more about somebody that really we have no interaction in our life. It doesn't mean a lot to us. But looking back now, it did mean a lot. So today I want to take you on a little journey back in time, but also here to this present moment because some lessons never lose their power. And I think it's very important because when we stop trying to learn from history is when we start repeating it over and over and over again. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I posted a quote from Anne Frank the other day about how, you know, if we see things happening that had happened in the past, we need to speak up. So I'm speaking up. I want to talk to you about a woman who embodied courage, resilience, faith, and her name is Fannie Lou Hamer. Now, I didn't know who she was. If you've never heard her name, let me tell you, she wasn't a celebrity in the Hollywood sense, but she was a giant in the fight for civil rights. She was huge in civil rights. She was the first Black delegate to always, whenever I do these studies, I always take notes. So here are my notes. She was the first, let me look real quick. I am looking. First female delegate from Mississippi, and she was the Democratic Party first Black delegate. She also ran, and she didn't win, but that wasn't part of her story. She was born in 1917 in Montgomery County, Mississippi. She grew up youngest of 20 children in a family of sharecroppers. And even when she was out in the fields picking cotton with her family, her and her mom was saying, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." And she let her light shine. Poverty was a constant companion, but she had a deep, abiding faith. She left school after 6th grade to work the cotton fields, but she never stopped learning about dignity, justice, and the power of speaking up. I'm going to read you part of the book in just a second to tell you exactly why this person was so amazing. Her life changed forever in 1962 when she attended a meeting run by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. If you don't know where that was, do a little research. It's basically they were trying to get Black citizens the right to vote and registering to vote. And at the time it was frowned upon, and they were given a lot of hoops they had to jump through just to get to where they could vote. A lot of these Black citizens were not, and that's what the book calls them, so I'm just going to use this again. They were not given a lot of education. So they were given these really long, drawn out voter registration tests that they had to take. They didn't pass. And Fannie Lou did not pass in the first time that she took it, but the second time she took it, she passed. She still wasn't able to vote. So that's where she decided she was going to be an advocate for voting. And she was going to register to vote, something Black citizens in Mississippi were systematically and violently kept from doing. The backlash was immediate and brutal, and she was fired, evicted from her home, beaten, and harassed, but that didn't stop her. She became a leader in the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and a voice that echoed all the way to the floor of the Democratic National Convention. Matter of fact, she had such an impact that President Johnson at the time was trying to make it so that she could not get on the floor or could not, because at the time, you know how they do the conventions, they televise them. He held a press conference to interrupt the convention, thinking that was going to interrupt her speech and her being on the floor. Even though he was for civil rights, he just didn't want those delegates from Mississippi to walk out. He wanted their support because he wanted to be the next president, actually voted in to be president. And it's so funny that he did that, because what happened was they taped the Democratic National Convention and it ended up playing her part in the news. So basically, what probably not half the country would even have watched the Democratic National Convention, but because Johnson tried to do that ploy, her speech ended up being seen by more people than if they had just let her be. Now, I want to read you a little story. And this was about when they were coming back from, and this is chapter 16 of the book. I'm not going to read all of it, but this is when they were coming back from, I forget exactly where they were coming back. Oh my gosh, where they were coming back from Charleston, South Carolina. And they stopped in a bus terminal. And there was 5 Black women stopped in a bus terminal in Winona, Mississippi. And 4 of her coworkers got off the bus to search for food. But Fannie Lou says, no, I'm too tired. We're an hour from home. I'm good. She said she was too tired. She'd rather just sleep than eat. But a few minutes later, she saw the 4 young women step back out into the hot sun with empty hands and angry faces. After climbing up the bus to check on them, Hamer learned that the restaurant and the bus terminal was refusing to serve them. The staff had called in local law enforcement to kick the workers out. She knew that denying them service was against the law, but she also knew law enforcement in these small towns existed not to enforce the laws as so much as the status quo. That is what it's like in Mississippi. And if you watch the very first episode of In the Heat of the Night, you can see these, and The Heat of the Night was in the 80s, but I think the show was 70s. I think it was back in the 70s. You could see that prejudice kind of being played out there, and then you see how it comes full circle. She said, this is what it's like in Mississippi. Rather than make a scene that would incite violence, Hamer advised her fellow field secretaries to write down the license plates on the squad cars, and they would file a report later. But with every eye in the cafe peering out the window, even that proved dangerous. The chief of police and his posse marched outside, grabbed them, and shoved them into the back of the patrol cars. Despite 45 years of enduring Mississippi racism, now the other girls were younger. They were like, I think they were 18, 19. They were in their teens and early 20s. But she was 45. She was like the head of the people. And despite this, she was shocked. She says, I didn't go into the bus terminal and I didn't do anything but just got off the bus. Why was I arrested? She protested from the back seat. And then the officers responded with jeers and racial slurs as they drove past the city jail and right out into the country jail. Now, you're wondering why they went out to the county jail instead, I say country, but it's county jail instead of the city jail. Well, they said they didn't care how hard we hollered. Wasn't no one going to hear us? This is what she said. And in the booking room, the chief of police stepped forward and said, what did you come here for? And her eyes dropped to the name on his uniform, Herod, come on, guys, Herod, who was the king I just caught that. He was the king that tried to get all the babies under 2 years old dead because he was scared that Jesus was going to take over. We're going to teach you a lesson, he growled. And the officer shoved 4 of the 5 women into cell blocks, keeping one of the field secretary, June Johnson's, with them. From her cell, Hamer couldn't see what they were doing, but she could certainly hear it. Her stomach turned with the sound of every blow and moan. Johnson, Hamer knew, was only 15 years old. Now, what was wrong with this picture? She was 15 years old. She was getting beaten up. The only thing she did was get off the bus to try to go get something to eat, food. A nail plunder was next. Within 10 minutes, the officer had broken her tooth, shattered her cheekbone, and fractured her skull. And then they came for Fannie Lou. Now, this is the part that they want to investigate more about this because, oh my gosh, there is so much to her story. The officers were tired from their first attacks, but they weren't ready to call it a day. And they said, we're going to make you wish you were dead. And they forced 2 Black male prisoners to take over the beatings. And they watched. Now, that is just sick, guys. Too terrified to refuse, the prisoners directed Hamer to lie face down on the cot in their cell. Hamer tried to shield her body with her hands, but the blows kept coming. When her dress began to slip up, 1 or more of the officers raped her. When the attack finally ended, her body was swollen and hard. She said she couldn't sit down when she got back to the cell. She would scream, "It hurt me to sit down." Despite her own pain and trauma, she was committing to strengthen the young women in prison alongside of her. Just as she had done on that first bus ride, she began to sing with me, "Walk with me, Lord, walk with me. Walk with me, Lord, walk with me. While I'm on, Lord, this pilgrim journey, I need Jesus to walk with me." Y'all, if that's not faith, I don't know what is. So then they started listening. The other field secretaries started listening to her sing. They started and recite Bible verses They were able to comfort them enough for them to go to sleep. And she was finally able to kind of just go to sleep herself. And then she woke up when she heard them say, we're going to put them in the Big Black River and nobody will ever find them. And they probably would have done just that, but someone at the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee contacted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who brought national attention to the case before it was too late. And after several long days and nights, Hamer and her friends were let out. She was equally sure of two things when she got out. By the grace of God, she had come through the valley of the shadow of death. And by the grace of God, she was going to make white supremacists, which they killed her when they had the chance. Now, this is the thing that really, when you think about things that happen like that, you can have hatred in your heart. But instead, and I took this note because Micah 6:8 says, compels us to act justly and to love mercy and walk humbly with our God. And basically it's saying she faced all these enemies, but she faced them with amazing grace and forgiveness. You can't love God and hate. That's the thing I want to put out right now. You can't love God and hate, because so many people today are trying to come after people that are different than them, but instead they can't love God and hate. Look at Jesus when he was laying on the cross and he said, God forgive them, for they know not what they do. Y'all, Fannie Lou basically said the same exact thing. She was going to make change so that it will not happen to the fellow person, to her fellow man. And it was at this time, she said, we have prayed and we have hoped for God to bring about a change. And now is the time has come for people to stand up. Now, there was another version that she wrote that if you can pray until you faint, but if you don't get up and try to do something, God is not going to put in your laps. So basically, God is calling you to do things. God is calling you to go to a protest. God is calling you to wake up and see things that are happening in the world and be a voice for people in the world. It may not affect the change right where you are, but somewhere around the world is going to affect change. There's a story also in this chapter, these couple of chapters on her, because I think her chapter is like 6 chapters long, her part of the book. But there's a story in it, and the story is that she goes to Ghana to rest, and she realizes what an impact her work is doing in Ghana, even though it was not impacting the U.S. at the time. So you never know. So when I read the words, we have prayed and we have hoped for God to bring about a change, and now the time has come for people to stand up, I can't help but think how relevant it is today as it was in her time. Honestly, folks, it's really relevant.
In a world full of chaos, she chose to anchor her story in hope. Through storms and silence, she found strength, and now she's inviting you to do the same. This isn't just a book, it's a lifeline. For every woman who's ever felt unseen, your healing begins here. Anchored in Hope, available now.
And we all need hope. With so many things that happen in our lives, we all need that hope. We've been through so much in the past few years. Think about it. If you even think back to 6-7 years ago, 2019, the country shut down because of the pandemic, COVID. We had lots of marches. We had George Floyd and the protests and the Black Lives Matter protest. We had now the immigration protest. We have people now, they're going after the unhomed people in Washington, D.C. We need to start thinking about, instead of trying to get rid of this what people call drugs of society, but they're not. They're people just like you and me. They're human beings. We need to find ways to affect change, and that is positive for all and not just for a certain category of people. That's why it says you can't love God and hate too. You can't. And I will admit, I'm not perfect. There are times when I in my life have hate in my heart, and I really had to address it and look at myself better. But we prayed for peace in our communities. I mean, I'm on my knees daily praying for peace. We hope for compassion in our politics. I will say that I was not a big fan of Obama as president, but as a person, I liked him. We need someone like that in office right now. We need someone who has compassion. We need somebody like George W. Bush, even though he wasn't the greatest president. He had a way of making the American people feel safe, for making people feel like he was in our corner, regardless of whether or not he was or not. We wish for justice for those who's been marginalized, and look at what's going on right now. They're trying to redistrict parts of Texas so that the marginalized community, the minorities in the community, which actually Texas is more a minority than there is a majority of white people. It's more minority people in that state. They're trying to put the redistricting so that they can put their cronies in office. I think the biggest thing that turns me off in politics is when you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, instead of looking out for the people. And I don't vote across party line. And I think people need to realize that when you're voting across party line, you're actually doing more damage than you are doing good. You're affecting democracy in such a way that it's not going to be able to come back. I am hoping and praying, like I said, I'm on my knees daily praying, asking God, keep my family safe, keep this country safe. And everybody says 4 years, we have 4 years and he'll be gone. But in a way also, when I'm praying, I'm also praying for the president. And I know you look at me and you're like, what? Because you have to pray for your enemies as well as for your friends, for your allies. You have to pray for your enemies. Now, I don't pray, God, please take him or please get him out of here. But I pray that the changes that he's making, that he will soon see the light of the changes of how it's affecting people around him. You see a lot of people in his camp are now kind of like moving away from it. One of his big proponents, and I do not like this woman at all. I don't hate her, but I don't like her, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's the most crass person ever. But she's even turning away from that. Now, if someone, and her and Laura Loomer, you need to go check out that Twitter feed they have on Twitter, on X, excuse me, and check it out, because it's like I sit there and laugh at it. It's entertainment to me. And every time I sit and watch a press conference, it's entertaining, because I'm like, people that are listening to this, there are people that are unfortunately uneducated in this country and are willing to take things what people say instead of actually doing some investigating. And if that is you, I'm sorry if I insulted you, but it's facts. There are people that are in that base that they want basically a white nation. And I can say that because I'm a white woman from the North Carolina, from the South. But I'm also married to an immigrant, a brown man. And it makes a difference. So, like I said, the last 3 years, we've been through so much. We had COVID, we had George Floyd, we had California wildfires, we had the Texas flooding. North Carolina got hit with a huge hurricane last year, Hurricane Helene. There's flooding still going on now. We have another hurricane coming up the coast, Aaron. There's so much going on right now and so many things happening in this country. I even saw, I think it was in Ohio, that there was massive flooding in Ohio. And some of New York was closed down too, I believe. Don't quote me on that one. I think that's what I saw in the news. But we've hoped for compassion in politics. Instead of lining the pockets of the people that are already rich, we need to line the pockets of the people that are poor and are not wanting a hand out, but a hand up. And I think that's the important distinction that we need to look at, is people that, yes, they may be on government assistance, but there has to be conditions to government assistance. There has to be, okay, you have to go look for a job, or you have to, or if, let's say, for instance, you are in a service industry, then to pay off to be able to apply for welfare and be on welfare, go work in a school cafeteria, a food service job. Go work somewhere where you're giving back to the community, and that be part of the welfare thing. I think that's an option, because there's a lot of people. Yes, there are people that need it, that are doing everything they can, and I'm not by all means disparaging them at all, because I have a nephew. My husband's number 9 of 10, like I told you. So one of his sisters has 10 kids, that some of them are here in the US, some are in Mexico. And one of the kids is a single dad, and he has 3 kids. And he's raising them all on his own. And he struggles. He works 2 jobs sometimes. He struggles with making sure, but he also struggles with keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with what his brothers are doing. And it's hard. So I think there should be, if you're getting government assistance, whether it be Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, other programs, I don't know what other programs are out there, but if you're getting that, there should be something of, okay, you need to volunteer, you need to do so much for your community and do community service. Because a lot of times when you go through court cases, if you get caught with a DUI or DWI, I don't know which state, wherever you are in the state, that they tend to give you the first time you go in community service. And that's normally picking up trash on the side of the road, pretty much. But, there are communities and underserved communities in this country that could benefit from community service. So, but as friends, as Fannie Lou reminded us, prayer is powerful, hope is essential, but there comes a time when we've got to put our feet to our faith. Now, my feet to my faith right now is writing the letters to the senators, going to see my representative, doing these podcast episodes, sharing with you the gospel, sharing with you my take on things, which you may not necessarily agree with, but that's okay, because we're all human. We're all have the right to believe what we want to believe. And if you have a challenge, something you want to challenge me on, send it to me. I would love to chat with you. But today, like I said, might mean standing up for the right to vote in the face of new restrictions. I literally hope it's not true that your birth certificate and your name on your birth certificate and the name on your driver's license has to be the same, because that takes out all the people and all women that are married that literally work, that have changed their name. I changed my name. So yeah. It could mean speaking out when your neighbor is treated unjustly. It could mean if you see something happening across the street or you see somebody being robbed, speaking up, being scared, but still doing it, even though you're scared. It might mean teaching your kids the truth about history, even when it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to sit down and talk to their kids about what happened during the Holocaust, but it's important that they know these lessons, because later on, it's going to happen to our country. And if we don't learn from history, we're going to end up repeating it over and over and over again. Look at the Japanese internment camps in World War II in California and how they took all these Japanese American citizens and put them in camps. They're doing that now to Mexican Americans, to Hispanics, to people that are permanent residents or who are sort of looking for nationalized citizens. They're not birthright, they're nationalized. They've gone through the citizenship. They've done everything they need to do. They've taken a test. And let me tell you something. Half of America, I'm going back 3/4, and I know that may be huge, of Americans that are born in this country probably could not pass this test. I know I can't. I'm sitting there watching the Real Housewives the other day of Orange County. And yes, I'm a big Bravo celebrity person. I love Real Housewives. But I was watching it the other day, and they were in Louisiana, and they were on the river, and they could not come up with the name of the river. The Mississippi River. I mean, come on. But nobody knew what it was. They had like the Big River, the Flat River, the Big Bad River. And I'm like, people, you're so stupid. It's Mississippi. So that tells you that these people, even though they have all this education and this money, still wouldn't pass the citizenship test. And sometimes it might mean showing up at a meeting, at a rally, at a school board session. Even for that matter, if you have a candidate that you really support and you believe they're going to do good for the country, going in, joining our campaign. One of my checklists for this week and next week, one of my checklists for this month, I should say, August, is to go by and volunteer for the Democratic Party, to volunteer for our next North Carolina state senator from North Carolina, U.S. senator, I should say, or Cooper, who was our former governor, because I think he's going to do amazing things in Washington, D.C. But that's you. You do what you can do. If it's getting on the phone and calling people and say, hey, if it's actually sitting down and looking at what everybody position on when it comes to voting, doing your research, sitting down with someone, having a conversation, looking them up online, just having that conversation. Because Fannie Lou Hamer didn't have fame or wealth. She didn't have the high school diploma. But she had a belief that God's people are called to live out their faith with action, even when it's risky. And sometimes she understood the challenge doesn't happen just because we want it to happen. It happens because every day people decide to stand up. Did she become the Democratic Party first black delegate? 100%. She ran for Senate. Did she win? No. But everybody knew who she was. And the fact that the president of the United States at the time, Lyndon Johnson, did a press conference to keep her speech from being shown during the Democratic National Convention, so they would preempt it and put him on just for him to talk about nonsense, which backfired on them because they videoed it and it ended up playing on the news over and over and over again that more people saw it. So see? So maybe ask yourself today, what is one place where I can stand up? Who in my community needs an ally, an advocate, a voice beside them? And I will say this much, when you're doing that and when you're looking at who's going to need an ally, who's going to need an advocate, who's going to need that voice for them, you do a little bit of due diligence, which means do some research on them. Because there's an organization here in Wayne County that I will not support because I know how it's run. I know the person running it. And even though they can sprout Christian values all day long, they're not very Christian and kind in their heart. You can't be a Christian on Sunday and then on Monday start causing disruptions. You can't do it. Because like Fannie Lou said, our time to stand is now. And our time is now. Thank you for joining me today. Let's honor Fannie Lou Hamer's legacy, not just by remembering her words, but by living them. Until next time, friends, keep standing, keep speaking, keep hoping. And if you like this, please share with your friends, subscribe, hop over into YouTube. You can see how I've changed my office around a little bit, and we'll see multiple times because I have the way to change my computer around. That sometimes getting a new perspective and getting out of your own head helps a whole lot. So until next time, guys, bye.